Yeah, no, he been doing them everywhere. He done did. Ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah. Okay. What's up, everybody? Here we go with episode 2 of the Street Level Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Ty Cone, along with my man DJ Igor Beats.
What, 2?
You know, Bay Life Radio in the building. And yeah, you know, I told y'all we starting it off right, you know. I don't know. I don't know. I kind of, you know, wish we could get some of y'all feedback, because there's so much stuff that happened in this first week of the new year, okay? We only 9 days in. 9 days. And I'm already done with the year. I'm already done with the year. And if y'all been watching what's been going on, you know, in the world, in the weather, just everything. It's like, you know, can we get a do-over already? You know, people thought last year was bad. You know, when our president, you know, came into office and started his term, but it's ridiculous. But anyway, like I said, this is another episode of Street Level Impact Podcast. You know, we here really trying to promote and bring unity to the community. You know, we do this for y'all. And yeah, basically trying to keep you guys updated on what's going on out here and you know, where we reside at in the Bay Area, as well as a few other places, and you know, just try to figure out how we can move forward around here and level up. You know what I mean? So without further ado, I guess let's get on this ride. Like I said, I don't really know where to start. I mean, I know that y'all been, like I said, watching the news and different stuff, you know. We have, quote unquote, at a war right now. You know, I don't know how everybody feels about that, but it's expected. I guess I put it like that. It's expected. You know, if you pay attention, you understand politics and how the world really works, quote unquote. You know, then it's understandable, because you know they definitely is monopoly, and it's definitely, you know, the haves and the have-nots. But just the way the man is going about it, you know, it's a trip, because some people is like, oh, he's doing too much, but no, he's doing exactly what he told you he was going to do. You know, I was having a conversation with some people yesterday in regards to what's going on in Venezuela. You know, how they went over there and actually sent troops on a mission to, I guess the word they would use is apprehend, but it seemed to me like they just went and kidnapped some people. You know what I mean? From his, you know, from his, what's the word I want to use? I mean, I guess you could say his complex or whatever.
Compound.
Yeah, compound, excuse me, that's the word I was looking for, thanks. Yeah, from his compound in Venezuela, him and his wife, the president of Venezuela, they go over there, send some troops to go snatch him up, him and his wife, bring them back to the United States on drug charges. You know, like I said, if you guys been watching the news, I know that you've seen, um, you know, them on the TV, and as far as, you know, they had their first court date, I believe, just 2 days ago with the raining and stuff, but like I was saying, to me, it kind of baffles me, because when I look at it, I'm like, okay, well, you know, we understand a little bit what war is, but some of their tactics is kind of above and beyond, you know. Now, when there's certain wars going on, you know, like in previous times, you know, with Bin Laden, Osama Bin Laden, or Saddam Hussein, different, you know, characters in some of these other countries, it was kind of understandable, because it was stuff going on back and forth, you know, buildings getting attacked, you know, actual war taking place, you know, back and forth, you know, bombings, all of that type of stuff, you know, troops getting deployed, you know, fighting against the terrorist groups, terrorists, you know, are actually getting deployed, and, you know, hurting people, and you know, taking, you know, taking hostages. So you kind of understood, okay, this is a real war. But some of the stuff that's been going on recently is a whole different kind of war. You know, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, in not even a year's time, our current president has, you know, went back and forth, or, you know, with more than 6, 7 different countries, you know, inserted himself in a war that wasn't even his, in regards to, you know, Ukraine and Russia, even over there, you know, with Israel, you know what I mean, what was going on in Gaza. And again, we can kind of see what the motives were, but this, with Venezuela, I mean, even with China and different things, we saw what the motives were. You know, it was money, you know, there was money involved, you know, resources, materials, different things of that nature. But it makes us look a certain way, you know, as the United States. And I'm just trying to really understand what their angle is, and, you know, you're claiming that these other people over here, they're terrorists, or, you know, they're, you know, as far as how they treat their people and different things, you know, like they're so bad, but then when you look at what we're actually doing, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. You know, like I said, I get it, but I don't get it, because it's like, okay, we're over here getting involved in this, like with Ukraine, you know, we jumping in the middle of their war, but at the same time, we were doing it in exchange for minerals and stuff that they had locally. You know, China, again, you know, is understandable about, you know, taxes and import, export. But again, you know, it was a different type of game. That was what the purpose of it was. And now here we are. And there were some other countries too. I mean, not necessarily a war, but kind of like with the tax stuff, you know, going back and forth. I know in the food and agriculture department, we were just going through something in regards to getting meat and different things that we normally import from other places. And now we're moving on to oil, you know, and like I said, just the way the man is talking is different. I mean, just like with what was going on, like I said, in Gaza and Israel and everything else over there, when you start looking at the way, I mean, there's no other way to say it. He was literally like dictating, you know, as far as Trump, you know, he's stepping in, telling people what it's gonna be, how things is gonna go, what they better do or what they better not do. You know, you know, it'll end up bad for you. He was really like making threats. You know what I mean? on TV. But he's backing some of them too. You know, we gotta give him that. He's not necessarily playing around. You know, it's get down or lay down with him. You know, shout out to the state property movie, but that's all I can say about some of that. But it's like, yeah, you over here telling these people, you know, hey, if y'all don't get it together, we gonna get it to, we gonna run it for you. You know, Venezuela, you know, right now, he's making statements like, hey, you know, we're gonna clean it up and we're gonna, you know, you guys have been treating the people bad there and you know, treating the citizens bad and, you know, the place is falling apart and we're gonna do, you know, we're gonna come in and we're gonna run it. You know, he even was doing that in different parts out here. Like I said, you know, so it wasn't like he was just declaring war everywhere else, I feel. He was even declaring it on this country as like, you know, hey, it's gonna be a full takeover. You know, it's more of a dictatorship than a democracy approach. You know, and I don't know. Like I said, I'm not surprised, but I'm kind of curious as to where it's gonna go next. You know, and again, the oil, the different things. I mean, is it that serious, or what's the become next? You know, so I'm gonna just leave that there, leave that on y'all mind for a minute. You know, feel free, whatever channel that you're watching this on, to leave a leave a comment, leave your opinions. You know, you can also contact me on the social media platforms. You know, Instagram, Facebook. But yeah, we just kind of want to get, you know, some of y'all thoughts on it. You know, what do you think is the next move? Do you think he's going a little overboard? You know, because at the same time, I mean, from an economy standpoint, they claim that we're doing bad, but then they're turning around and assisting, you know, in these other countries and navigate, you know, using our resources to navigate them through wars and other situations, but they claim that, you know, we have a lack of resources. But then on the other side, with these different laws and stuff that are changing and going into play, they're basically, you know, draining us for what we got. So I'm trying to understand, you know, who's the, you know, who's the real opposition here and what the real goal is. So, you know, like I said, it's just food for thought because that was on my mind. But, you know, yeah, get at me and let me know what you think. But anyway, I don't want to stay up on that too long. There's a lot of other stuff that's going on right here locally, and I'm just ready to jump straight into it. First of all, as far as well, hold on, let me start off with this, because I'm kind of want to get this out of the way. Because this happened after the show last week. So last week, you guys know that we launched the first show, the first episode here of the Street Level Impact Podcast, but it came to my attention after the show that there was a murder, or a death, excuse me, I don't necessarily know if it was a murder, but there was a death that took place in San Francisco. The actor Tommy Lee Jones, and I don't know if you guys remember him, but you know, he's the guy from Men in Black. You know, Will Smith, he was the other agent. You know, Tommy Lee Jones, he's a well-known actor. He's been in movies and stuff for years. His daughter, Victoria Jones, I guess during the New Year's holiday, she was staying at the Fairmont Hotel, which is, you know, a pretty upscale hotel in, over in the city. They found her deceased in the hotel. You know, I believe, I guess it was like about 3 in the morning, but they didn't actually break the news until that afternoon. So I didn't find out about it until after we did the show. But I guess it's, you know, it's still being investigated, but, you know, 34 years old, I just, you know, it's kind of, it sounds, you know, kind of funny, you know, but New Year's, you know, you gotta be careful. A lot of different things happen. There's a lot of crazy people out here in this world and different stuff. So you know, you gotta definitely pay attention and be mindful of your surroundings, be aware of what's going on. But I just wanted to mention that real quick before I forgot, send out our condolences and, rest in peace to that lady. Hopefully, they get to the bottom of what caused it, and if there was some foul play, hopefully, it all gets brought to justice. But at the same time, it made me think, cause they act like, oh, the city is, not necessarily that the city is broke, but that the city is on a downgrade, over the last years. But then you still gotta remember, the Bay Area is a popular tourist place. And as far as financially, I mean, California, Northern California, right here, quote unquote, Silicon Valley, we're still, we're still a tourist attraction. We're still a hot spot for people to come visit. And you'd be surprised how many celebrities are out here on a regular basis. You know what I mean? Like, whether it's announced or unannounced, but more often than not, unannounced. And so, to hear things like that happen, that's tragic, and then it's like you're thinking like, well, again, what could a person possibly, or, what kind of situation was she in for that to even happen? But, gotta be careful, especially, like I said, nowadays people are crazy, even at these different events and stuff, you got some people just, out of their mind, choosing to do different things. So just gotta be careful of your surroundings. But I'm hoping, that we don't really have to look to dealing with those kind of things, going forward with it being a new year. I mean, like even out here in the Bay Area, we, got a lot of stuff. The Super Bowl is about to be here in a few weeks. You know what I mean? It's gonna be all the celebrities, everybody. I'm seeing different shows and, different events popping up. All sorts of celebrities, athletes, musicians, actors, actresses, as well as, big corporate execs. And it's like a trip because here we are trying to rebuild, we're trying to build up. And that kind of stuff doesn't look good. The president, like I was saying before, when, this previous year, he, San Francisco, Oakland, the Bay Area in general, were some of the cities and some of the regions that Trump was going after, on one side, from the ICE, and immigration, situation as far as with quote unquote illegal immigrants, just down to crime and the conditions of these cities, which, of course it is homelessness is an issue, but when you look at the other factors that are involved, it's kind of like those definitely need to be addressed, and if those were addressed in regards to housing and things like that, as well as, just cost of living in regards to work wages and other things, that things can be resolved. And ironically, when he was trying to send the National Guard out here, claiming that it was such a bad place, they have data to show different. It's, I believe in the city, crime has actually went down, over the past year since the other mayor took over. But overall, there's still a lot of wild stuff going on, but I guess overall, some places it doesn't feel as bad as they claim for it to be. The city, for example, and we have other cities around here that are implementing different things, but like the San Francisco, not only have, they included different cameras and stuff on the streets, but as well as they have a drone program. I remember watching that, and they were talking about how they've had over, I think it was over 300 arrests due to them using drones. Um, so yeah, it's cutting down a lot of crime, whether it's, you know, car burglaries or shootings or anything else. So it's like, you know, you got the eye in the sky right now. So it is, you know, along with the other cameras that they put in different places where, you know, they can kind of track your movement during, you know, with the license plate readers and different things. So, um, you know, I think that overall is beneficial. And I just think if they, you know, like they're trying to do by dealing with it another way, that, you know, eventually we can bring all that stuff down. I mean, you know, there's other changes being made to with certain laws, and like I said, even with work wages and hopefully, you know, housing and different stuff. But I think that we're actually on our way to turning this stuff back around. So, you know, we all just gotta kind of gotta bear with it, you know what I mean? But if we just stay down and stick to it, I think that we can definitely come out on top, you know, at least by the end of the term, this president's term, you know, hopefully. So we kind of gotta, like I said, stick together on all of that and rock out. But yeah, let's see, what else is going on out here? You know, like I just said, there's other things that are in play in regards to businesses and other things too. It's kind of a back and forth. We got businesses that have been established here that are now closing and shutting down, but we also have new businesses that are opening up, everything from restaurants to other types of businesses. So I just wanted to speak on that a little bit. One of the biggest things that was announced this week was the Valero refinery. The Valero refinery, which is located in Benicia, they announced that that they plan on shutting down the refinery up there, which I know again some people will think, hey, you know, how is that going to affect us? And it is in different ways. I mean, you know, of course, that's jobs for people. You know, which is one of the negatives, I guess, about it. But, and another thing too could be, you know, hey, gas. You know what I mean? Just, you know, when we think about it, the population out here has definitely increased. A lot more cars on the road, and you know, we had the Valero refinery and also the Chevron one. So it's, you know, it's like, okay, well, if you guys are closing one down, what's going to happen next? But they did make an announcement and assured the governor that they've already have enough, I don't know how to say it, but they have enough supply already in stock there, you know, to be able to handle the transition. So we don't have to worry about it necessarily being a shortage on fuel around here. And in addition, they also have measures in place to import, you know, from some of their other refineries. So, you know, that's one adjustment that we're going to be making. But yeah, the Valero refinery is going to be shutting down out here. Couple other places too. In Oakland, there was a known hot dog spot called Top Dog, and Top Dog has been open. They have more than one location. Their original location, I believe, is in Berkeley. Their flagship location. Now that one is still going to be open and operating, but their Oakland location has been closed. The Oakland location was open for approximately 14 years, so you know it was quite a staple out here. But yeah, not necessarily sure why they closed it, but it seems to be happening out here with a lot of different restaurants or, you know, businesses that were actually a part of our history, in a sense, if you want to, say that. But yeah, so they announced that they're closing. I know Casper's hot dogs too, and that's a trip because I grew up on Casper. Casper hot dogs, that was a chain, a fast food chain growing up out here, and I think that I think they only have one location left open now out here. I have to double check to do my research, but yeah, I know that they closed down some of those earlier in 2025. So, like I said, some things are definitely changing. In San Francisco, and that tripped me out because I went to school over here. They had a movie theater over. I'm trying to remember necessarily what district that would be considered, but it's near the West Portal station, and that's going towards the avenues in San Francisco. But the West Portal is it's a substation for the Muni system. And so a few blocks like a block from there was a movie theater called the Empire Movie Theater. I remember cutting school and going to the movies, and not really trying to give you guys my age or just to tell certain things, but I remember cutting school and the movie Titanic had just came out. And I don't know what made us do that, but we decided, after hanging out, the day wasn't over. Like, hey, let's go to this movie. 3-hour movie. I think that was one of the first movies that I've ever watched that was that long. I think the very first one that I watched was that long was the Shaka Zulu movie. But and probably, Godfather and stuff. But yeah, outside of that, that was the first movie. It was like 3 hours. And I remember because it was like 4 of us, and people would fall asleep. You know what I mean? But it was cool. I have memories in that place. And they had closed it back a few years. They closed it down a few years ago. I want to say about 9 years ago. They closed it down, and the entire time, the theater has just been sitting there empty. Like a lot of these businesses throughout the Bay Area, which again, kind of confusing because from commercial properties to even residential, a lot of stuff that got shut down, and that also causes problems with jobs and housing for people. But since then, they have, we got, like I said, new businesses that are starting to open up. There's been a lot of new housing developments being built, and I'm saying that because they just announced that the movie theater is actually going to be torn down and replaced with a 9-story housing development. So on one side, I think that that's pretty cool, because again, hopefully we can, try to offset some of these problems that are going on out here, like I said, the homelessness, and I don't even want to say homeless, because the correct term actually now is unhoused, because that's what it is. It's not necessarily, they're not, you got people that, it's not that they're broke, but the housing market has kind of priced them out, so that's really been a struggle, and that's everywhere. You got people living in their cars, going to work every day, living out of families, living out of RVs, just trying to park where they can for however long they can, and that's an issue in itself because they're not being allowed, to just park on the street anymore. During COVID and other things, it was different. But, now there being certain mobile parks or, locations that they had designated for them to park their RVs and mobile homes. And since then, some of them been shut down. The funding has ran out. And so it's like, what are people gonna do next? But you look around, and I'm starting to see too a lot of developments, a lot of housing lists, and different things have been opening up. So hopefully, you know, like I said, we moving in the right direction. But yeah, they plan on. They didn't say exactly when the development will be built, but they are planning to start demolition on that theater. So I don't know. I might have to go over there and try to snap at least a picture in front of it. You know what I mean? Just, you know, just for the memories. Let's see, another spot that well, these are spots that are going to be opening out here. So like I was talking about businesses, Benihana's. You know, Benihana's one of my favorite restaurants. I'm pretty sure everybody, you know, knows what type of, you know, they do the hibachi style cuisine. Benihana's is pretty famous food chain. It originated on the East Coast. And you know, it got pretty popular. I mean, there's other versions too, because like I said, it's the, you know, the hibachi style cuisine, you know, I believe it's Japanese style cuisine, but there's other places like Shirishoni's in Alameda, Hannah, Japan, I believe. And I've been to a lot of different places that are similar, but Benihana's is, you know, is kind of like the biggest chain from what I've seen. They've been expanding a lot. And they already have several locations here throughout the Bay Area. I've been to a couple of them. But they recently just announced that they're going to be opening up 10 new locations here in different parts of the Bay Area over the next few years. And they're starting off by opening 2 new locations this year. And so, you know, keep a lookout for that. Hopefully, depending on what part y'all listening from, what part of the Bay Area, if you don't have one, hopefully they picking yours. They picking your area to put one in. Because I know for some people, you know, it get kind of hectic. You know, you got to drive to Concord or drive to, you know, to the city or other places. And so, you know, that's something to look out for. You know, I mean, it's going to create some jobs, like I was saying too. And, you know, we'll see what happens. Another spot that's going to be opening up, which is actually going to be opening in San Francisco. They haven't announced when, but Tom Brady, you know, the football star, who was actually a Bay Area native, you know, he grew up right here, is from here and everything. He just announced that he's going to be opening a sports card shop. The name of the sports card shop is Card Vault. And so it's going to be located across the street from Oracle Park in the city, you know, where the Giants play, over there near 3rd Street. They haven't announced an official opening date or anything yet, but I guess, you know, they're probably still getting everything together as far as marketing and stuff like that. But I think that that's pretty dope. You know, like I was saying, they are doing different things to build around here. I mean, you got other celebrities and, you know, athletes, as well as other type of celebrities, you know, that have opened restaurants and different things of that nature out here. So I guess, you know, that's one more thing that's gonna, you know, bring more tourists, you know, more money, hopefully more jobs, more everything, you know, because again, when I grew up, this was one of the main places, you know, the city, the whole region as a whole, the Bay Area was always thriving based off of that. I mean, when you look at how many airports we have in the vicinity, international airports at that, you know what I mean? Because we are on the coast, so even for people coming from other countries, like, this is a hub, you know, this is, for some of them, their first destination stop. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Let's see, who else was just opening something? I gotta look through my notes, you guys, give me a second, cause I know that there was, oh, OpenAI. OpenAI is a company that they actually, they already have offices out here in the Bay Area, but they're in negotiations to try to open up additional office space in the city. Um, I mean, we'll see what happens with that. Again, I saw the .com era with the internet. When a lot of these businesses all started up out here. Then of course they moved elsewhere. Then, this other time around with the social media sites and different things, a lot of them started right here in the Bay Area, or were built up in the Bay Area, then some of them moved on. Facebook, however, the Facebook headquarters, they built a whole community.
Right.
They built their own city out here, basically, which was different, but props to them for actually, making this, their choice as far as headquarters. But yeah, some of those other startups and different companies have since left, but also with their merge of Silicon Valley and different things, the Bay Area is kind of like a headquarters for startups in the technology industry. Tesla was out here for a while, when they was on their come up. A lot of these, I don't necessarily want to say robotics, but robotics companies, different AI companies, a lot of them are actually, startups right here. And, it's interesting to watch how things are developing. And like I said, I'm kind of excited to see what's going to happen as a result of that. Hopefully they don't just build up and then leave. You know what I mean? Because that to me that'd be kind of pointless, and I think that would hurt the economy locally, more than anything else. But yeah, OpenAI is going to open additional office space. Speaking of companies that are also out here, Waymo. Waymo is going to be launching, Waymo is the automated, like the car taxi company, where it's no drivers. I've never rode in those yet. I still feel a way about them. Even driving to the city, I was out in the city last week after I left this show, and it was a trip because I parked my car, trying to get out of the car, get stuff out of the car so I could make my way to this event, and I was parked near a corner, and it's still, it's the weekday, it's commute time, so you got people trying to get home, there's traffic on the streets, but I had to really take a step back and look, because again, I was parked near a corner, so I could, and it was raining, so you couldn't necessarily, I was paying attention, but some stuff you can't see all the time, and so there was a lot of cars that were been in the corner pretty quick, and I started noticing how many of them were Waymo cars. When they had passengers in them, and some of them they didn't, or even cars stopping to drop off and pick people, drop off people and pick them up. But you would have thought that it was somebody driving that car, the way that they were bending corners.
Wow.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, like I said, don't want to say I'm scared, but I'm still kind of reserved. I don't know how to, even a Tesla, I've rode in a Tesla a few times, but every time there was a driver behind the wheel. I wasn't never in the car where somebody tried to use the auto setting, to let the car drive itself. And I don't know how long it's gonna take for me to actually feel comfortable with that. You know, I like people being behind the wheel. You know, anything can happen. And then when you look at different things like the power outages that they had in the city, you know, where the cars actually were just stopped in the street. You know, it's something that you gotta think about because again, there's still computers that, you know, they ran by computers. So then it's like, hey, when power grids go down and different things like that, how is it gonna affect us? You know, do we really have to worry about stuff just getting shut down? You know, do we really need to put that much trust and rely on these type of things so soon? And I don't necessarily think we should. I think there still needs to be tests ran and different things. Now, a friend of mine who's actually applying to work at some of these type of companies, he had informed me that the original Waymos that are driving around everybody right now are actually old software. You know, it's like first, second generation software. The new taxis that they plan on launching this year, which are more like vans, they're actually the sixth generation. So there's been some upgrades. And from my understanding too, you know, even though Silicon Valley is here, when it comes to the world, we're not necessarily number one. You know, we're pretty close up there in regards to technology and leading things as far as, you know, robots, AI, flying cars, you know, electric vehicles, all of that. We are in the runnings as far as the top spot. But, you know, we're kind of behind with some of our stuff too. Or at least with them releasing it to the public, you know. And that makes you think, okay, well, why are they doing that? You know, is it because of the test runs? Is it because they're still trying to work things out? You know, and so yeah, I'm still reserved. Like I said, even the robots. I don't know if anybody's heard about the robot Atlas. And there's a company on the East Coast that a robotics company that they're one of a few, but they've been putting out different types of robots, you know, to work in warehouses. You know, I've seen ones that are kind of, you know, they walk on all fours, they're kind of like dogs. You know what I mean? And they use those to patrol as well as to do different work in the warehouse. But these actual robots, this internet clip that I was watching, they move like us now. You know, yeah. You know, when they were first showing all of these robots and stuff over the last few years, you know, they looked real bulky. They didn't have range of motion like a human, but these new ones that they're showing now is totally different. Like I said, there's one robot, you guys get a chance, you look it up, I believe they call it Atlas. And when I say the robot was dancing, and I'm talking about really dancing, you know, moving freely more like a human, able to run, you know, and as far as their I don't want to say but their stance and everything, you know, again, it looks more human-like, you know, able to hop and skip. You know, it looks like they might even be replacing athletes at one point, you know. Some of the older videos I remember they were showing, like in China and stuff, they had robots over there where they had robots able to box and, you know, playing soccer and things like that. But again, certain parts of the robots hadn't been quite as developed, whereas now it's a lot more advanced. You know, they have fingers. They, you know, they have fingers. They can grab stuff. They can actually do some of the movements that we can do. And again, it's scary because, yeah, we're programming them, but they're also being upgraded and developed, you know, with AI, artificial intelligence, where they can think for themselves and develop themselves on their own. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I know that there's one company, I believe, that is launching robots for personal use that people can buy this year. I think they start out at like 20,000. But you know, for those I'm talking about, you know, standing up like one of us, you know, full-fledged Terminator, if you will. That's what some people refer to him as. But you know, again, it trips me out. But I also noticed that they were still working through malfunctions. That's scary. I don't want a robot in my house where I have to worry about anything happening, whether it's around the kids, whether it's around, you know, me while I'm asleep. You know, different things. You don't want to be in the kitchen and, hey, you got it cooking over here or cutting up vegetables, and the next thing you know is coming at you with a knife. You know, we've seen movies about that kind of stuff, and we closer to it than we think. So I don't necessarily know. I think that they should be putting that energy and those resources into other things, you know, that we can control. Because again, doing that, like the warehouse that I saw, it was a trip because I've worked in a warehouse before, you know, warehouses are pretty loud, you know what I mean, with all the different people along with the machinery, different things that are working. When they were doing the interview of the guy, and you looked, and all you could really see was a few robots here and there inside the warehouse, but it was pretty quiet.
Wow.
And I was like, I guess, you know, for business owners, CEOs, then, you know, that's a good thing because they're looking at, you know, cutting costs on labor. You know, you got to think production time. You know, a robot doesn't have to stop to use the bathroom. They don't have to take a break. They don't necessarily get tired. You know, some of those things you don't really have to worry about. You know, them even working outside in certain weather conditions, you know, versus humans. And I guess, like I said, that's an upside for business owners, but it's a downside for the employees, for the people that need to, you know, make a living, make a way. So I just think, again, you know, hopefully they do what's best. Hopefully they look more into it and, you know, keep us, you know, as a priority. Yeah, let's see. What else has been going on out here? Talked about that. Weather, climate change. You know, it's been going on for the last couple of years. It's starting to get a little bit more intense, in my opinion. I don't know. These last few winters that we've seen here in the Bay Area, or that we've seen in California, period, on the West Coast, have gotten a little bit more extreme. A lot more cold fronts, you know, weather that we normally would never see over here, that you normally would see, you know, in the northern states or, you know, eastern states. We're starting to really experience that weather. From storms to even just temperature wise. I mean, you know, we've reached over the last few years, you know, we've reached close to, you know, freezing temperatures out here. In certain parts of the Bay Area, we have seen snow in the last few years. And even like with the recent, you know, rainstorms and different things, it's just, the weather is really starting to kick up. You know, we used to think back in the days, in the 90s, like with El Nino and stuff, that has nothing on what's going on right now. you know, the rainstorms that took place over the holidays affected a lot out here in the Bay Area. A lot of flooding was going on, a lot of different places, you know, freeways to everything else. So like we said, you know, the infrastructure is serious, along with power outages. You know, you'll charge us all this money to be in certain places, like San Francisco, for example, but yet and still, when they have all these events and stuff going on, like the New Year's, you guys got, you know, major parts of the city that's, power grids are going down. But the grids aren't strong enough to be able to hold, you know, the amount of electricity that's being used. You know, BART train system, you know, they're steadily trying to expand it, but there's issues on the BART every other day. There was just one earlier today. You know, they're having different technical issues, whether it's with their system, their overall system, or trains malfunctioning. You know, they've had generators and you know, other power grids connected to the BART system, or you know, the muni system that have shut down. I know they had something that blew up a couple weeks back, and you know, it's just something that we got to think about is how is all this stuff going to affect us. Another thing that's been happening is earthquakes. We've been having a lot of earthquakes in a short amount of time. I want to say at least 10 or more, even in just the last 3 months. Am I right? There's a lot of earthquakes, and not no small ones necessarily either. And it seems like they're getting closer and closer. You know, this morning there was a 4.2 earthquake in the North Bay, which was past Santa Rosa and about 12 miles east from Cloverdale. 4.2, you know, and I know just the other week, you know, like closer to Oakland and like, I don't want to say it was San Ramon area, but it was going out towards Contra Costa County, where there's a couple different earthquakes that happened there, and some, you know, some nice sized ones. I don't remember what size was the 89 earthquake? Igor, do you remember?
7.5.
7.5? Oh, okay. I'm trying to think of what the highest one was that happened recently. I want to say it wasn't that. Well,
What's the strongest earthquake that recently happened?
and as far as the closer ones, I don't really think that they went like above 5. I know there was 1 or 2 that happened further up north, I believe, that were bigger. You know, but again, it's just something to think about. It's like, okay, you know, they say that we overdue for that too. You got all these different things happening, so it's like, you know, what's actually going to happen out here? You know, the world is changing. You know, the earth's shifting, different things, and so it's just something that we gotta, you know, prepare for. But yeah, I say that because too, we're talking about the weather, windstorms and earthquakes. I mean, rainstorms and earthquakes. You know, extreme heat before that, but now they're saying that it's gonna reach 20 degrees and lower as of tomorrow. I think tomorrow, or this Saturday, certain parts of the Bay Area, primarily I believe up in the North Bay, yeah, they're supposed to be seeing temperatures as low as 20 degrees. And like I said, even these last few weeks, you know, there was a couple nights or, you know, a couple mornings where, you know, it was dropping to 40 or, you know, the 30s. You know what I'm saying? 40s and 30s, but definitely, you know, once you start talking 20s or lower, you definitely gonna see some snow. So, I mean, I'm prepared. I got, you know, pea coats and Carhartts and you know, hoodies and things of that nature. But I'm just wondering, is that going to be the new look out here? You know what I mean? Are we gonna really have to start worrying about, you know, having a real winter season out here on the West Coast? Um, and what does that tell us? Like I was saying, you know, from the earthquakes to even, like I said, the rainstorms, the king tides that are coming in, and everything else. You know, what is that gonna mean for us landscape wise? You know, or we're already in the process of trying to rebuild or adding new developments and different things, but, you know, overall, again, you know, as far as infrastructure is concerned, you know, are they preparing for that as well? Are they taking the precautions, you know, because, again, from the earthquakes to even the floods and different things, we have to look at what kind of upgrades we're gonna need to do, whether it's to these buildings, new and old, these freeways, all that kind of stuff, you know. But yeah, it's just something, like I said, to keep in mind, depending on what y'all doing this weekend, you feel a little chillier than normal, yeah, make sure you bring a coat. You might want to put a thermal on, you know what I mean? Or some sweatpants under your jeans, you know. If you outside, y'all know what I'm talking about. But yeah, make sure that you bundle up out there, because ironically, when you see clear sky, and I'm just from my experience living in other states and stuff too, you'll see a clear sky and think, okay, it's not that bad, but that don't mean that it's gonna warm up. There's some places where even when it snows, that in between time between the snowfall and different things, it might just be clear skies, but the temperature will be very cold. And like I said, I know that has to be a result of climate change, but also I think that they said the Earth right now, as far as where we are in rotation, we're close to the sun as well as the moon. And so, I'm not a scientist, y'all, but as far as when when they examine that, depending on how close we are, it can cause different things to shift. So like I said, the king tides, the flooding, the rainstorms, or even the drop in temperature, or the rise in temperature, you know what I mean? So it's just something that we gotta be mindful of, because, honestly, we can't go nowhere else. I know they trying to make it sound good about going to the moon or, building hotels and stuff, but you really gotta think about it. Why do you think they're building the AI and these robots and different things? The first thing that's gonna happen is they're gonna send them up there before us. When you think about it, because who's gonna build all of that stuff that's out there? They're not sending a bunch of people to go to the moon and build, especially when some of the resources that we need to survive is not on the moon yet. You know what I mean? So, that's going to take a while. And like I said, it's interesting to see, but then again, it's not, because it's like, okay, well, why are we putting those resources into preserving what we have here? So yeah, like I said, keep your eyes open. Try to be mindful about what you do. Make sure you take care of yourself as well as others, and definitely pay attention to what's going on. Even the slightest bit of news. Because they'll throw other stuff out there to kind of make us forget. Or make us not really pay attention to what's important, and we got to, because, like I said, what's supposed to happen next? Robots everywhere. What are we gonna do? No jobs. What are we gonna do? Even from a technology standpoint, because of course, the more robots, they don't really need us to do no work. They might need I was saying this too when I was watching the article, watching that episode, because it's like, okay, they're saying that yes, there's still gonna be jobs, cause they're gonna need people to program these robots, or, like these cars and this other technology, and repair them. But when you think about it, artificial intelligence, part of it is you're programming them to teach themselves. So at the point when they teach themselves, and from a business standpoint, it's about, production and everything else, what are they gonna need us for when it comes to repairs? The robots will be able to repair each other, or repair themselves. I saw they were showing, like a visual, presentation, and it was, basically showing how they were programming the robot, but the way the way that the programming works in the software is, like, for example, they would, hook a regular person up and say, for example, get you doing jumping jacks, right? And then the software is trying to explain to the robot how to do it. Well, what they were showing is it was a bunch of different examples of, okay, showing how the robots are trying, to learn how to do the jumping jacks and how to do it effectively and efficiently. And it took a minute, of course, because they, got a bunch of different, robots, I guess, their brains are trying to process how to do it. But then eventually, when they were able to get one that could actually do it, from that one robot, they were able to program all of them to do the exact same thing, the same way, and like I said, that's scary. That's scary, because what are we gonna do at that point? But yeah, I don't wanna freak y'all out, you know what I mean? It's, like I said, but it's starting off weird this year. It's starting off weird. Hopefully it turns around for us. But like I said, it's just different things we gotta keep in mind. Also, since we was talking about the weather before I move on, for those of you that have had to drive and travel in these conditions, you might not have thought about it, but due to the king tides and the flooding in certain areas, whether you realize it or not, you were driving in salt water. You're driving in water from the ocean, and the salt splashing up on your car, or even your car being submerged in it, like how, they were in Southern California. The salt water can eat at the bottom of your car. It causes it to oxidize, rust, deteriorate. People that live down south that have experienced floods and stuff, they kind of know what I'm talking about. If you ever bought a car from out there, the whole undercarriage of the car, or the lower engine compartments, like I said, they rust out and different things. So if you happen to get a chance before the rain breaks out again, and it's the weekend, so you guys, you got a little time, but try to stop through a car wash, especially if you can go to one of those automated ones, because, they can rinse off, spray off the undercarriage for you under the car. But yeah, just keep that in mind. You want to keep your stuff intact for as long as you can. Let's see. What else is going on? Sports. Talk about sports, and then after that, I guess I'm gonna get to some job stuff, and then get ready to get up out of here. But I know y'all see this hat. Don't get it twisted. I got a big head. It just happened to fit my size, and at the same time, I'm a fitted hat guy. I like different hats. I like exclusive hats, stuff that I don't necessarily see everybody with. And it was bought for me as a gift, because I know you're like, wait a minute, he in the city, You know, he in the Bay Area, you know, and about to start talking about the Niners, but I got on the Cowboys hat. That it just went with what I had on today. But yeah, about the Niners though, right? Now, as we all know, the Niners have officially made the playoffs. Um, this Sunday, they're going to be going against the Eagles at 1:30 p.m. Um, we hoping that, well, I can't speak, you know, Eagle is a Raiders fan, but, you know, I know a good majority of us out here is hoping that they win, you know, especially seeing how the Super Bowl is going to be right here in our backyard at their stadium. So, you know, that would be pretty dope if they could make it all the way to the Super Bowl. You know, so in order to do that, they got to win every single game. And definitely got to win this one. That's going to be this weekend because it's the first playoff game. You know, the regular season is over. We did lose the last game against Seattle, but yeah, it's playoff time now. So, you know, hopefully we can pull it off. I know that they recently, over the last few days, just signed a couple of people, and hopefully it helps strengthen our roster because, you know, anybody who's been watching football, you know, during the season we've been dealing with a lot of injuries, but hopefully we can turn that around. You know, we've had some reserves, you know, people, the second string people who are coming off the bench, if you will, that have actually gotten in and stepped up in certain games and, you know, made a difference and turned some things around. Shout out to my boy Eddie Pinero, the kicker. You know, even in the beginning of the season, he came through in clutch a few times for us to help win some games and, you know, kind of help us get to a decent record for this season. But other players as well, you know, was it Mac Jones, you know, the backup quarterback, as well as some other players. But they recently just signed Eric Kendricks, you know, which is a veteran linebacker. And, you know, he's somebody that they think is going to make a difference, seeing how, you know, we have Fred Warner and, you know, some other people that are out. But definitely, I think it was a good addition, you know, right before the playoffs. And like I said, you know, hopefully it'll definitely make a difference in the game this weekend. They also signed tight end Messiah Swinson, you know, to the practice squad, and one or two other players. But yeah, you know, hopefully they can pull it off. I mean, we got the team to pull it off. They have the structure, you know. We just gotta wait and see what happens. So, you know, keep our fingers crossed. You know, hopefully everybody's tuning in, and like I said, we need it. We need this to turn around. We need this year to start off right. So we need to have a win right here at home. You know, I think it'll boost the morale and the energy in the environment. You know. Also, before I get off the Niners, I just want to shout out Roger Craig. You know, Roger Craig was, you know, a former 49er. You know, it was just announced that he's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. So, you know, shout out to him. So, you know, he deserved it. You know, but yeah, that's pretty much it on the sports side. I mean, the Warriors too. You know, the Warriors, they just won the other night. You know, they still the team. I don't care what you say. They still the team. I see different people, you know, talking about, especially in the beginning. You know, there's been a lot of different things that happened over the last, you know, 2 seasons or whatever, with different trades and, you know, Klay Thompson being gone, new additions to the Warriors roster, but overall, their structure is still pretty much the same, you know, so I think that they can still be a contender for this season. So, you know, let's root for them and keep them going. But yeah, that's about it on sports. And, I'm about to get up out of here, y'all, but before I do, I do wanna let you guys know about some different stuff that's going on. First of all, jobs, you know, cause again, we were just talking about it, you know, different things that's happening out here with the job market, but I wanted to let you guys know about a few things that are coming up. Longshoremen. The longshoremen, the union they're gonna be opening up the lottery next week, you know, for people that are looking for work. I wanna say it starts, they're opening up the longshoreman lottery January 14th. So that's is that next Wednesday? I believe it's next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, you know, you guys can go apply online. If that's what you're interested in, I mean, you know, it's a good job. It's a, you know, pay benefits and things like that. I happen to know a couple people that are longshoremen, and you know, they tried to get me to do it before. And to be honest with you, I probably should have took them up on the offer, but you know, I'm out here tycooning. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I'm doing all right with what I'm doing. But if you know that's something that you might be interested in, they're opening applications from January 14th up until the 21st. So you know, might want to check that out and apply for them. Pay attention, because I know sometimes you know our computers or different devices, you know, they start acting up on us, but they wanted to let everybody know that you can only apply once, you know, so make sure that you're somewhere where Wi-Fi is strong, or, you know, your devices are charged up, because if you apply more than once, or actually, you know, accidentally send in double applications, you will be disqualified. So, yeah, they're not playing. And that's what a lot of jobs out here too. I noticed that they're doing things different as far as even their application processes, the whole nine. Job fairs. Tomorrow, there's going to be a job fair in the city, January 9th. There's going to be a job fair, and it's for, you know, it's open to different people, but it's gonna be, I'm trying to pull up the location real quick. And some of these, like I said, I'm looking as general jobs, you know. Some stuff I find is, if it's more specific, you know, I would share that with you guys as well. But, what are we doing? I believe it starts, shit, I just missed that. It starts, give me, oh no, that's for the post office. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff that be going on, so I'll be trying to get all the information stored in for y'all, but it'd be a lot to keep up with. So the job fair is going to be tomorrow. It is at damn, I really can't find it. Let me see. Well, the other job fair, yeah, that's not it. Give me, no, that's a mobile program. Here it goes. It's gonna be a UCSF. Well, no, it's gonna be at Mission Bay, excuse me, at the Pub Lounge tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And the job fair is for UCSF transportation. So, you know, anybody is interested in, they're looking for shuttle drivers, valet representatives, as well as parking representative lead. So, if anybody's interested in that, you can make your way to the Pub Lounge, Rudder Center, which is 1675 Owen Street in the city, from 10 to 2. You know, it might be a new career opportunity for you. So that's something that, you know, if you're in the area you want to check out. And like I said, the post office is doing a series of job fairs, and there's going to be in different parts of the Bay Area. One of the first ones is going to be this Saturday at the Richmond Hilltop Carrier Annex. So it's January 10th from 10 to 2 at the Richmond Hilltop Carrier Annex, 4180 Lakeside Drive in Richmond. January 12th, which is Monday, in Santa Clarita. They're going to be doing a job fair there as well for the post office, but it's mainly for vehicle maintenance people. But that's going to be January 12th, Monday, from 11 to 2, 24355 Creekside Road, Santa Clarita. They're also going to be doing one January 12th in Sacramento, at the Mark Sanders Career Center. January 14th, they're going to be doing one in Concord, at Port Chicago Highway. January 14th, they're also going to be doing one in East Palo Alto, as well as Woodland Hills. Damn, so yeah, that's a lot. It was like 4 different places, or 3 different places all in one day. That one is for skilled and vehicle maintenance positions only. San Mateo, they'll be doing one on the 16th. They'll be doing one on the 16th also in LA and in West Sacramento. So if anybody's interested in that, you might want to look up United States Postal Service, you know, and look on there for jobs. And grab that information, or even see about applying on there, you know, get ahead of the game. You know what I mean? But I know that's pretty, I don't know how to feel about that job. I feel that the Postal Service is necessary. But again, with technology, you know, for a while they was trying to eliminate even sending stuff in the mail. You know, packages being delivered is one thing, but as far as the actual mail, you know, a lot of places are trying to get you to convert to digital so they don't have to send that stuff out. But I'm kind of curious as to how the postal industry is going to, you know, necessarily stay afloat. Even from a warehouse standpoint, if you get replaced with robots. You know. And that's it, I think. Oh, BART. I know I was just talking about BART, how crazy it is with driving, but yeah, BART is hiring too. You can look on their website for some of that information. And that's about it, man. I'm pretty much done this weekend. If you guys are in the East Bay, you can catch me at a boxing event that's going to be put on in San Leandro. Shout out to my folks, Big Folks Pop. You know, he's the coordinator for the event. And his company on Everything I Love. They've been doing a series of boxing events. You can go check it out on YouTube. And it's basically, you know, friendly phase, you know, just people having fun, getting their energy out, you know. Been doing them all over the Bay Area, you know, Oakland, San Jose, Richmond, Hayward, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Berkeley, Vallejo, just everywhere, you know. So this weekend is going to be in San Leandro, Thrasher Park at 2 o'clock. You know, if you out there or you stop by, you know, come holler at me. I'm going to be out there trying to get some footage and hanging out, seeing what kind of content I can get. But yeah, that's about it. I guess we'll be back with some more updates on what's going on out here next Thursday. In the meantime, if you guys, you want to share your opinions about anything that was discussed today, like I was saying before, you can, hit me up on social media through my Instagram page, the Tycoon415, same thing on Facebook, or on Instagram. You can contact directly at the podcast page. That's the SLI Podcast on Instagram. At DJ Igor Beats on Instagram. And that's pretty much it. Also, I can't see what you're pointing to.
The flyer, like on your right shoulder.
The flyer.
It's up on your right shoulder.
Oh yeah, I can't see that, y'all. But yeah, if you're looking on the screen right now, the flyer is right here. There we go. On my right shoulder right here with the information. Also, you might see it flash, during commercial breaks and stuff. And we're also looking, speaking of commercials, that's the story that I forgot. And I'm gonna tie it into what I'm saying right now, but if any of you guys, got businesses or events coming up and, you need help advertising, things like that, definitely hit us up. We have some different offers that we can, give you in regards to radio promotion and marketing. We just trying to help y'all, help us help you, and what I mean is because I don't want to necessarily end it like this, but I did forget one story, and there's a local radio station, and I want to just, wish them luck. Hyde FM out of San Francisco just announced that they're actually looking at having to close down their station. Now Hyde FM, they started back in 2019. As you know, it's a local underground radio station, catering to DJs and underground artists. But they recently announced that they're making plans to shut down because they're, lack of funding. Okay, I guess their expenses come up to, I don't want to, but they made the information public, so, their expenses, I guess, to run the station comes to about $775 monthly, and, they've been having a little bit of a struggle. As of a few days ago, they announced that they're still short like $375 for their expenses for the month. And I guess, according to their projections, they don't know if they're going to make it past March. Again, I'm in the same field, and we know how that is. And, again, that's why I said we got to help each other. You know what I mean? So help us, help y'all, and, definitely, if you want to get advertising on here, or, if you need any hosting, if you want us to, make any appearances, things of that nature, or if you just genuinely want to help us out, by all means, please do. Reach out to us on one of the platforms, and, we can give you some more information on how to do that. But, like I said, it's a community. We gotta bring it together, we gotta hold each other down. We don't know what's gonna happen next. And, with us being, for the, community-based podcast, we built this from nothing for you, for y'all. So, and that's to bring y'all the truth and to bring y'all the information that the mainstream necessarily not gonna bring. So, again, help us help you. And other than that, I guess I'm getting ready to get up out of here. Thanks everybody for rocking with me. I know I was running my mouth a little bit. I shouldn't have drank the energy drink. But yeah, check us out next Thursday. Also, if you're interested in being a guest or any other type of sponsorships for the show, you know, contact us again on one of the social media pages, and we'll see about getting you scheduled. Other than that, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and keep a lookout for us next episode. I'm working on the guests, you know what I mean, and stay tuned online too, because we're gonna announce it sooner than you think on who's coming up here. Other than that, this is the Tycoon. I know Igor tired of me running my mouth. It's time for us to take a smoke break, and I'm gonna tap in with y'all, man. Like, share, and subscribe.
This set though. Informative. That's the point. It's very informative. That's good.
I think we need to sit in the smoky room.
Drake dip, corner shot my razor. Ghost Rider whip, neighbors yelling y'all crazy. E40 slang, whole Cadillac crazy. Hustle so strong, we the whole block hazy. Deals on the street lights, hustle on the corner like a fiend. Chasing green stripes, not steady hits, niggas born like a brick. Street level impact, the ground like split. Street level impact, with a baseline crack from the trunk to the block. No way to turn back, hands in the air, we gon' make this clap. Street level impact, yeah we go for that. Street level impact, with a baseline crack from the trunk to the block. No way to turn back, hands in the air, we gon' make this clap. Street level impact, yeah we built for that. Engine growling, payment screaming in protest. Side shows, rolls on the cold deck, money on the table, dice hit the pavement, flipping like a DJ, stacks in amazement. Might be in my bloodstream, bounce like hydraulics. Game tight, sharp as a barber's wallet. From Brooklyn to Malaysia, the vibe stays solid. Street level impact, raw and symbolic. Street level impact, with a baseline crack from the trunk to the block. No way to turn back, hands in the air, you gon' make this clap. Street level impact, yeah we built for that. Street level impact, with a baseline crack from the trunk to the block. No way to turn back, hands in the air, you gon' make this clap. Street level impact, yeah we built for that.
Yeah, that's what I'm like, I thought it was dope, okay. I didn't know that. All I said,
Street level impact.
I told it, like you didn't do it for Bay Area community, Baycott, Davis, that's it. The whole